definitely put a lot of time and effort to really hone in on what we know that we do well, and also try to, expand. Because, we've made a bunch of rock and roll records, have like what, 7 albums or something like that. It's like, all right, like, do you want to make the same record again? Not really. Like, let's try to, like, do something a little different, and that's what we aim to do.
And Ghost Cult Magazine is back with Steven from the Stone Eye. How are you today?
Fantastic as always.
Fantastic as always. That's wonderful. It is kind of a dumpster fire world. So anybody that has like super positivity and PMA, positive mental attitude, if you're punk rock fans and you need the acronym figured out for you, I'm a fan of. So thank you, Steven. Appreciate your enthusiasm. Congratulations. You have a brand new album out.
Yes.
Fata Morgana. I hope I said that correctly. I feel
Yeah.
like it's Latin for something.
Yeah, it's there's a meaning to it. I'm totally blanking on it. Our bassist came up with the title, but it had some like cool, like ethereal meaning, and we're like, oh, it sounds cool too. Like, yeah, let's roll with it. But I mean, unfortunately, I'm blanking on what exactly it means.
No worries. Ethereal is a good word to describe some of this record. There's a
Hmm.
there's a real. First of all, this is, I know every band is supposed to say, it's like the Bull Durham speech. I'm just happy to be at the show. This is supposed to be my best record. I'm really proud of this record. We worked really hard on this record. We took our blah blah blah. But this is really, I've been following the band for a while, and this is really an amazing record that is your best record to me so
Oh,
far.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we certainly feel that way. I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, like you're saying, like, oh, this next work's our best. But I mean, we do try to push ourselves musically every record. You know what I mean, and try to, evolve. And as we get older and like our music like tastes change, and we try to have the music that we create reflect that. And I feel like our latest, this release, we've definitely put a lot of time and effort to really hone in on what we know that we do well, and also try to, expand. Because, we've made a bunch of rock and roll records, like we have like what, 7 albums or something like that. So like, we it's like, all right, like, do you want to make the same record again? Not really. Like, let's try to, like, do something a little different, and that's what we aim to do. And yeah, we're really proud of it.
As you should be. And I feel like also, this record kind of separates you out from the masses of bands. There's it's hard to put a genre tag on the band, and I'll ask about that in a second. But, I have my own, I've always like slotted the band into kind of like modern stoner rock or psychedelic rock. And there's a huge swath of bands in that, flavor of the rainbow, in that
Yeah.
slice of color in our music. But this record kind of pushes you outside of that, out of your comfort zone, or out of just into another arena. Maybe even a little more like almost a progressive rock band a little bit. I hear all kinds of things in there, but I wanted to ask you, one, was that a conscious thing for you guys, or did you just go write the record you made?
Um, I'd say it's a mixture of both. I mean, like I said, we certainly had progressive rock influences, and we're always trying to, like, just vary things up. So I think it was conscious, in in the way where it's like we write a song, we're like, all right, like this sounds like a Stone Eye song. Now, how can we, change this up a bit, or how can we incorporate, different elements that we haven't incorporated before? How can we just make it interesting, to us as musicians? So I mean, like how the songs came out. I mean, they came out how they came out based on us jamming. But there certainly was, like, when we'd write a part, like we'd certainly spend a lot more time workshopping it this time around. And from those, workshop sections, like certainly came like this more progressive sound, because a lot of our members, love progressive rock. I mean, I'm not the biggest prog rock fan, but like, drummer Jeremiah and then Christian, I mean, they love progressive rock, so it just naturally came out through like more workshopping and a more team effort this time around, versus typically me writing like most of the songs and then not much work done to it.
Nice, helping me with my segues to other questions. Perfect. And I was going to say, those guys, much like me, probably a lot of childhood memories of wearing a towel like a cape, and
Yeah.
progressive rock nerds, D&D, pretend capes and wands. There's a Venn diagram of behaviors. They're probably like, you're going to become a serial killer. You're going to become a prog rock fan. Yeah, for facts.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
where that's our fate. And like the album title. Yeah, man, it just definitely has that sort of aesthetic. It's also got kind of a little bit of a fantasy feel to it that I don't think you guys have delved into too much before, a little bit. So I really am, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling it very
Thanks,
much.
bro.
And
Appreciate it.
yeah. And you know, again, it's such a crowded field of bands, and there's so many, and even like a genre like, if you know, the modern traditional heavy metal bands, like younger bands who like Manowar and you know, like
Yeah.
Dio, like obsessively, there's a whole glut of those bands. So if all you do is kind of sound like that, you sound like everybody else, even if you're the best band in that scene. So I
Hmm.
think it's really important. You know, I still feel like you guys are a band that's growing and still emerging and young after a long stretch of records. So I just feel like it's important to keep trying to build and expand, because you know, you could, I get it that a lot of bands like, we're good at this and here's where we stay between these two poles, and I get that fully, but I think it's really cool that you guys are, you know, pressing and pushing forward.
Yeah, no, I mean that's like I said. I mean it ultimately comes down to the fact that we want to keep it interesting and fun for ourselves, right? So like, it's like, all right, like I've played this music for a long time, and like here's how, like, yeah, you always want to like push yourself forward and challenge yourselves in new ways, and that in turn is a lot of fun. So it's like, all right, like, I've written this style of song a million times, like maybe I'm gonna do this or that, just make it more fun for yourself. So when you play the songs, live or rehearsing or whatever, it's like it's just more fun. And by being more fun, it just becomes a musical evolution in a way.
Right on. And I imagine you had a couple of years to work on this with the state of the world and not that much touring, perhaps. But I
Yeah.
also wanted to ask if you are the type of band that pre-pros a lot, because I'm meeting a lot of bands these days, young and old, who are like, oh, we had everything workshopped up before we went in to record on day one. We had all the songs down pat. Or are they still evolving while you're recording solos and passages and things? Or are they still developing when you're recording, or they're all worked out?
It's hard to say, like, or answer that completely, because we have a union where a lot of our recording is done by ourselves. And then like another half of it is usually done in a studio. So like this past record, we did drums and bass in the studio, and then we did guitars and vocals and like all the MIDI, like keyboard stuff. We did all that at like Christian and I's place. Because I dabble in recording. I also mix the records too. So like we generally have the song structure down, how the song's gonna go when we go into the studio, just to lay down like the caveman drum and bass combination. And then when it comes to, finishing like the song, like, like wrapping up the loose ends, maybe composing a solo, like adding some like guitar fluff, that usually comes like, later down. I mean, not all the times, but sometimes it comes on like down the line. Like the solos, for example. A lot of the solos are like some of the last things to be composed for a track.
I love that you said guitar fluff. That needs to be a whole thing. Guitar fluff. Yeah, there are a lot of earworms on here and little earworm passages on repeat listens. I got to spend a little time with this record since it came out, and I've been absorbing it to get this conversation to happen. So, you know, that's important to me. And then I go back and I listen to other stuff, and you know, I've heard the EPs and the splits and all the things. So I'm boned up on the band. So that's why I feel like this is a culmination of a lot of work, not just this album, but
Yeah.
things, you know. Some bands
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
new record and they go left turn, but you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's musical evolution. What you're saying about Corona and all that, we certainly had more time to like spend on like writing, workshopping it and everything, which, again, is like a newer thing for us, and which has allowed it really to evolve the way it has. But yeah, I mean, all those factors play a role into how the album ended up sounding.
And I know you didn't have too much to give up on the title, but the artwork is also pretty distinctive and
Hmm.
maybe different than any other cover you've ever had. Of course, any thoughts or feelings on that album cover?
It looks awesome. Some dude reached. So I run a little record label called Electric Town Records, and some dude, I'm blanking on his name right now. Well, unfortunately, I don't have that prepared. But he emailed me and he's like, "Hey, like, I'm an artist. I have a bunch of, you have a label. I do a bunch of artwork." And then he sent me like his big portfolio, and he's like, "If you ever want a piece, like, let me know." And then I looked at the email. I'm like, "Oh, that cool. Like, let me check it out." And I looked and it was like amazing, like really like crazy interpretive art pieces. And I'm like, we should use this for the album, because I also felt like it sort of, like represented the album as like a culmination of just weird styles and variety in it. I'm like, and you look at the picture and it's like practically schizophrenic with all this shit happening. I'm like, we should use that. It's really cool. And I guess it kind of tied into the weirdness of the album.
And it almost feels like a 3D relief of an image. Like it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like a flat image on a page. It's like jumping out. It pops, right? Pops out at you.
Oh, absolutely. it's like every time you look at it, you like you can like see and pick out different things because there's so much shit going on in it. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely like the mall pictures. I want to see the sailboat. It's definitely one of those
Hmm.
Kevin Smith references right there. And Electric Talent is super interesting to me also. We try to pay attention to whatever the label puts out, right? And not every label you could say it's like, oh, this whole discography is flawless, but it's getting there with Electric
Oh,
Talent. It really is. It says a lot about the bands they're chosen to work with and what's coming out and when. And just year after year, the last few years, we reviewed like 600 albums last year. It goes call something's wrong with us, but and not all me. I did like five, but like we have a big staff of people that do reviews voraciously, and we did quite a few, and a couple made our end list. So whatever our final boss list was. So yeah, man, it's been an impressive arc for the label too.
oh, thanks. I really appreciate it. I put a lot of time into into that, as you can imagine. So it takes up a lot of my time. So to
Right.
have those nice words reciprocated, if I'm saying that correctly, thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if somebody wants to pitch you, how does that is that even possible? You get stuff word of mouth. Do you take submissions, and how?
On the website, there's a demo submission section. And it's mostly, I mean, honestly, I'm very thankful that most of the artists that we put out reach out to me. And I assume it's from word of mouth and, put out some bands and then like their friends' bands hear about it. It's a lot of international artists too that reach out to me. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I just get like, you know, stacked with like submissions, and then from the submissions, I listen to some tracks. I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, like that band, and then from there we just start working together.
Is there any one particular thing a younger band can do to catch your attention? Like, what is the one standout thing beside good music, obviously, that would make you pay attention and give somebody a second listen, or make you contact them?
Good music, of course, and then also how professional you are in regards to how you communicate, how good of a communicator you are. Like, if you just send me like five MP3s and like nothing else, it's a lot more, I'm a lot less inclined to like be like, all right, let's do this, because it's like it takes up so much time, and I'm a one-man show over here that I just don't have time to like necessarily like, build a whole band's like, back end in regards to like, press kits and all this, that, and the other. So I mean, more so if you just have like your stuff together and it's like in a mostly completed state, and it's to like, like a good like foundation is built besides just having the music. I mean, that's really it, because I mean, if, like I said, if I get like five MP3s and like nothing else, and like not even like a email, it's just here's my music, it's like, okay, you know.
Right. Bands, don't email your tracks. Like, send a link to your Dropbox or something, or your Google Drive, or
Yeah, like
your
press kit
EPK if
and
you have one.
mm-hmm.
Like, do not attach files. This is the same. This goes for us too. Anybody trying to pitch us to review your music, you have less of a chance. If I see attached files, I'm like, nope. And I'm like,
Yeah, like you need something to work with. Like you need press photos. Like
yeah,
ideally, you have like the artwork like available for the album. Like
right.
you're you have everything together, right? Not just like five tracks. Because in like five tracks and like, hey, this is my album. Like not like an introduction or anything else. It's like I don't, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
we get yo sup. Let's check us out, and it's like,
Yeah, it's
get us
like it's
out
not worth
here.
my time. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I mean, it could be worth my time, but again, it's like how much time do I have to allocate to this like, project that I'm doing? Like I don't have like, I have like five other bands that like musically are probably similar, and on top of that they have the shit together, right? So it's like, yeah.
I have taught a lot of music marketing to labels and bands, and my number one thing is like, help me help you. Don't make it
Yeah,
harder for
exactly.
me. Please don't make it hard for me.
Exactly.
Make it easy for me to help you, and then you have a better chance for success.
Absolutely.
With that out of the way, and thanks for sharing all that, because I think that was very cool intel. Let's do a quick free association track by track review of the album. I'll just shout out the titles, and you share whatever you feel like sharing about each song, and I think that'll be fun for us.
Okay.
The album kicks off with A Bit Like This.
So that song, it has a very weird timing going on during the verse. And then we also, the reason we put it as like the opening track is for when they have that humorous opening, and it was a total ripoff of Millionaire, how it goes from like that high fade till it just opens up. Like that was totally a ripoff of Millionaire by Queens of the Stone Age, unapologetically so. Um, yeah, it has like weird timing during the verse. I think it sounds kind of different compared to like everything else we've really done. So we're like, all right, I feel like this is a good track to open up the record with because it's a little out there, but it kind of gives you like an insight into where the album's gonna go in regards to being out there.
Word. There is, I was gonna say, I don't want to play myself, but I was gonna say there's a definite Queens of the Stone Age, Caius vibe going on here throughout
Mm-hmm.
the record, and definitely Songs for the Deaf, Vitamin R.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's there throughout
Yeah.
the, in bits and pieces, not like all the way through, but like, yeah. So I got that too immediately. I was like, oh yeah, I fully hear that. The second track is TGR.
Another weird proggy rock song that kind of has this weird jumpy riff. It's a ton of fun to play live. It's a staple of our live show. It has a very like Alice in Chainsy kind of chorus, and then the bridge, like the banana not na na na, like that's like a very like stoner rocky kind of vibe to it. But then it breaks off into that weird like doo 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 doo, which is like straight like weird ass King Crimson like prog. And like we tried to make that part especially weird with like these like little leads and like voice things and all that. And yeah, that song is really fun to play live, and also has like some humorous elements at the end with like the voice being like, now play the blues. We just we liked adding like in this record especially, we liked adding like little like bits of character in there with like things like that.
Lots of
So
bits of character in there, this album. I like it.
thank you.
Oogie Doo is next. I hope I said that correctly.
Oogie, yeah, Oogie Doo. So it's called Oogie Doo because our initial name for the track was Scooby Doo because someone told me it sounds like a Scooby Doo song, and it's another track. Like it's very weird, but it's also kind of a straightforward song. The chorus, I love the chorus. I find it very haunting with the harmonies. The ending is weird as hell with all the like all like the layering going on. That's another like staple of our live show. Like a lot of people really like that main riff. That's like boot doo 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 doo. It's kind of like our White Stripes like Seven Nation Army, I guess, with like the hummability of that main riff. Even though it goes from like what like 7 to 4 or something like that. I don't even know, 7 to 8. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love that time signature too. The next track is Not My Circus.
Yeah, so Not My Circus. I watched Ween live December in 2021 for the first time. I'm a huge Ween fan, and I was like, wow, like they effortlessly bring so many genres of music together for this like complete live show. And I went home and I'm like, wow, I want to write something that's like a little out there for us, right? So I tuned my guitar to open B, which is like folk like tuning, like for finger style picking, and I'm just jamming around, and I'm like I just stumbled upon the riff, and like within like half an hour I wrote what became the song, or at least all the parts of the song. And yeah, I was just like, oh yeah. And then my friend too, my friend Mike Madison is like, he's like, yeah, you need to write songs that are in four sometimes. I'm like, okay. So like I wrote that song because I'm pretty sure it's mostly in four, and it kind of just like grooves. So that was like trying to like sound a little different, like from a textural standpoint, with like the acoustic guitar, like the acoustic days of the new, almost like rock and roll, but also like just like a good like rock song.
I dig it. Probably my favorite title on the record, Sacrilegious High.
Yeah, so that track is we were just jamming one day and I just stumbled upon that main riff, and it kind of reminded me of like a Fontaine's DC kind of vibe. So like the British like punk band right now. And me and the drummer are like very big Fontaine's fans, so like the riff kind of reminded me of it. And we just kind of jammed on like, oh, this is pretty cool, and then stumbled upon the chorus and the bridge over time. And yeah, it's just like a good straightforward rock song that's a lot of fun to play and pleasant to the ear, in my opinion.
Very cool. Some of these song titles remind me of Family Feud answers. So I want to be like, show me Ain't All That on the board. Ain't All That is the next track.
So ain't all that. It opens up with a Morse code thing, and I forget exactly. This is another like, character thing, but like you're like, ooh, Morse code, so deep and whatever. And it's actually saying the Stone Eye fucks. I believe it's either the Stone Eye rocks or the Stone Eye fucks in Morse. Because I found this Morse code website. I was putting all these goofy things into it. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna open the song with that. So yeah, that song. Our bass player Mike, he really laid down the grooves like pretty good on that. Like there's like a lot of slapping and like moving around on that. And yeah, I like how the chorus, it kind of goes from this like kind of kind of like schizophrenic like jumpy like main riff to like this like very like stone and that, like the chorus is like kind of opens up. And also the bridge section I find really cool. um yeah, So yeah, that song's cool.
Word. Mike did a killer job on here. Gotta give him his
Oh
flowers.
yeah, no, he was fantastic on bass. His performances were excellent.
Agreed. Denora is the next track.
So the Nora started off as like a 2 minute track, initially just the verse and then the choruses. Like, well, it's that song you hear. And then we started workshopping it and just messing around and playing random things. And from like what was supposed to be like a 2 minute song, like turned into a 5.5 minute song because we added like that little like weird bridge section that like I don't like it first sounds like Queens of the Stone Age like clockwork when it's going bow 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 now that part that's where I really hear the Queens and then it breaks into this like six. I mean, I'm not a drummer. I can't tell you the time. It's like 6/8 clave. Like I guess like our drummer Jeremiah, he had like the inspiration from this like Cuban like jazz beat or something like that. It's like really. So if you listen to the bass and the drums, like during the ba da 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 like the bass going bum boom 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 boom. So it's just another one of those like workshop became very weird and like fun to play kind of thing, and the song totally went in a different direction than what we had in mind in the first place.
I dig it. The next track is Czars on Foot.
Yeah, so funny footnote on that. So the name of the track, I got it. So I was like looking at idioms or whatever, and like it was Kings on Foot, I think is the slang, and it means song. I forget what it means. I thought of the song name like what 9 months ago, so I forget exactly what it meant. But Christian and I were talking. We're like, oh, I wonder what Czars on Foot. Yeah, I totally forget. So it was supposed to be Kings on Foot, but I thought Kings on Foot sounded too generic, so I changed it to Czar. Like the Russian king. So I do Czars on Foot, and it turns out Czars on Foot is like Russian slang for like taking a shit. And I didn't realize it until like a week ago. So yeah, that song, that's our take a shit song. Uh but no, so Christian wrote the main riff, the bum 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 da, 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 da. He wrote that main riff and we thought it was really cool and fun to play. It's very interesting sounding. And then like the bow ba na 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 da na 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 na. So I wrote that in the chorus and like that verse part kind of reminds me of Primus because it's just like weird. And then it opens up into this like straight forest chorusy thing that was inspired by like bands like Dive and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's a really cool track. It can be a pain in the ass to play live though, just because it's like it just gets weird and like there's a lot of like little like licks in there that are like not my muscle memory isn't quite like attuned to that as being like more blues oriented. But meanwhile, the tracks are like and I'm just like I don't. But yeah, no, that track's fun. We're bringing that back for the tour coming up. We're actually rehearsing it today, so
Oh, nice. Lots of luck. And
thanks.
I couldn't pull it off. Oh well is the next track.
Yeah, oh well. So the name of that track is Oh Well because I was struggling to find inspiration for lyrics, and the song is pretty much about not having inspiration for lyrics because I just don't care about writing lyrics in the moment. So yeah, that song. Yeah, I wrote the main riff. It was we kind of finished that track at the very end of the album, and it admittedly it's probably the most throwaway track of the entire album. It took us forever to like get it like sounding right, but when we did, I think it's a cool track. But it's more of a straightforward rocker. I mean, certainly has more like it has proggy elements with the time signatures and all that, but it kind of is like a singular, like straightforward, like grooving, like tone to it. And yeah, we like that song. We've never played it live though.
Well, there's a first time for everything. Uh
Yep.
Parading Faces is next. We're in the final last few tracks of the album. Parading Faces.
Parading Faces. Christian also wrote the main riff for that, and then we just workshopped it. And then like I came up with a few parts, and I also came up with the chorus, and that's another track we've never played live. And yeah, I mean that's just that was actually one of the first tracks we wrote for the album. Um, and yeah, I dig it. It's certainly like different for us, and it's kind of it's not very like rock and rolly. It's more kind of just like laid back. At the end, it gets rock and rolly, but it's more like laid back, like staccato picking kind of stuff. Um, I don't really have much to say about that one. It's a cool track, and I dig it. I really like the keyboard work that Christian did on the verses. Like there's this one like lick with the keyboard it goes ba na 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 na, and it always reminds me of like an old 16-bit video game with like with the samples we used on the keyboard. It's like this like chimey sound, and like every time I hear it, I'm like playing my NES right now or something like that. like for whatever reason, I always think of like a 16-bit soundtrack or like an 8-bit soundtrack when I hear that part. But yeah, it's a cool song. And then the ending also is kind of inspired, like the ba na na na. That's inspired by Fuzz, Ty Seagull's band.
Nice work. In Lieu of Roses is the next to last track.
So in lieu of roses, it's like our 9.5 minute epic. It started off with that main riff, like the bounce, 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 and that whole part of the song, and then we did like the little bounce, like staccato chorus, and then it breaks into that middle section, which is pretty much another song, right? So initially, that was supposed to be another song. I was watching the Beatles Abbey Road documentary that came out on Disney Plus, like what, like a year and a half ago. I was watching that, and I got really inspired, and I wrote that entire like middle section of the song, and then I presented it to the band after we had worked out like the bounce, bounce, like the main like riff of the song, and we were like trying to figure out what to do with that main riff of the song. And I'm like, well, I have this new song, also let's jam on this. And then our bass player Mike, he heard it. He's like, "What if we try to combine them? Like, it might be kind of weird." And at first, I was like, "I don't know. Like, like I don't think they should be combined. I don't think that'll really work." But then we tried combining it, and it worked out great. And yeah, I mean that song's a ton of fun to play live, and it's definitely our most epic, quote unquote epic song. Like, there's a lot going on there. And then also, I really like my solo that I do during like the middle breakdown section. And also that middle breakdown section too, the chords I chose were heavily inspired by Jerry Cantrell's Boggy Depot.
Great
So,
album, very underrated stuff. I
oh,
wish
amazing
it
album.
was a Brighton was great, but I was like, oh man, I miss Boggy Depot and Degradation Trip and stuff like that. Good
Oh
stuff.
yeah, I mean,
And
Degradation Trip Part One and Two. I mean,
yeah,
I listened to that album so much when I was a kid. I actually saw the Brighton tour like a year and a half ago or whatever, a year ago.
nice with Greg
It
on
was fantastic.
vocals. Insane.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
Word. So much stuff to unpack, but the final song is the very distinctive and different, I think. I'm Dying, Mother.
Yeah, so that's a cover. That's it's
Yeah.
by a guy named Bert Hare, and I've tried to look him up, and there's really nothing on him. And I guess what happened was they recorded like the actual track in like a it was like a field recording. Like some dude was going around in like the 60s, I think, like doing field recordings of like, Americana folk artists. And I just stumbled upon that song. I'm like, wow, this is a really pretty song. I really like this, because I'm big into folky music too. So yeah, just one day I was bored. I kind of rearranged it into a more bluesy thing because initially the song's played on the banjo. So it's like a more bluesy acoustic thing. And I recorded the track one day out of boredom in my basement. And then yeah, that's what you hear on the record. It's I think it's a really pretty song. So I was just like, yeah, might as well throw in a little like, ending. And then we have that little like comical like character ending thing going on at the end, that I alluded to earlier.
Right. Kind of reminded me of Little Amigo the Devil Darkness there. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan. So it
Yeah,
seems
that's why it reminded me of that too. And I kind of like those songs that like have like this like very dark undertone, yet like the track is like very kind of like jumpy and uplifting, even though like the lyrics are like total despair. Like something about that like duality like intrigues me. And that's a big reason why I recovered the song.
right. And it's a definite change from the rest of the record. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're shifting tonality here completely.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
get chill for a minute and sit on the floor, everyone, and listen to
Yeah,
me
yeah,
play
yeah.
this ditty, which I like. I like a lot. It's a
Mhm.
really good choice. It's a cool choice to end the record that way instead of like a lot of bands go out in a flourish. And I'm sure you've done that before. I know you have. So it's like this is a very different ending for a record for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sums up the album as a whole, where it kind of just goes in different directions a lot, and it's like, if you're gonna do that for the rest of the album, might as well end that way too, right?
Indeed. So thank you for that. That was awesome. And as
You're very welcome.
we wind this up, and I want to give you back the rest of your day. Obviously, got this huge tour coming up to talk about, man. Smile, Empty Soul. Wow.
Yeah,
Just that's crazy. So
yeah.
cool.
This is the second time we've toured with them. We toured with them last year too, but yeah, no, it's their 20th anniversary, so we're going out with them. We're gonna play some shows. We're gonna be on the West Coast too, which is why I've never been in the West Coast in my life. So yeah, it's kind of cool to be like, oh, I get to play music out here. Like that's awesome. But yeah, no, we're like it's gonna be like what, like 25 dates or something like that. Starts off next Wednesday. We're playing a show at Brimstone Coven in Morgantown. And then the tour with Smile officially kicks off May 20th in Arkansas. And then from there we go out to Vegas and we come back to Pittsburgh, then we go back out to Arkansas, everywhere in between. So yeah, no, we're really excited for it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and can't wait to share the new record with people.
Word, I'm stoked for y'all, and just very exciting times. Congratulations. I know you worked for a very long time, the whole band has, to get to here, and I'm sure there's more to come. But congratulations on everything. It's super cool to connect with you finally and talk about the band and talk about music and nerd out on this stuff with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, my pleasure. Just anytime you want to have me back, just hit me up.